Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Hi, I'm Anisha from Oman Book Lovers Club. Thank you all for joining in today for the very special bonus episode of season 2 of Live Chats at OBLC. An idea that just developed into this fabulous series. I cannot express my joy as I speak today. It has been an honor, a delightful experience to talk to each author, each one of them award winning, best selling, representing diversity in all possible ways. Before we get started with our chat, I would like to take this opportunity to talk very briefly about Oman Book Lovers Club. Founded for the sheer love for books and reading, to borrow, share, exchange books, and meet fellow book lovers, it has since then transitioned into so much more and created its own identity. The vision is to connect all book lovers in Oman to make it one stop for all things books. We have something for everyone. Connect with fellow book lovers and talk about your favorite books. Share your books amongst members, meet fellow book lovers, read along book of the month followed by book discussion, and all of this replicated in our kids club, toddlers club, and teens club. There are book reviews, recos, people seeking suggestions for books for themselves and for kids, members growing each other's TBR, you name it. Members can choose which activity they enjoy most and engage in that. A happy space for book lovers in Oman. Today, in the special bonus summer bonanza of the live chats at OBLC Season 2 Women's Edition, we are talking to the very amazing Alka Joshi, New York Times best-selling author. Goddess of wealth, Lakshmi. But is she really what her name means? There goes the bad luck girl. The year she was born, locusts ate the wheat. Want to know who the bad luck girl is? Want to know more about the story of Lakshmi the henna artist? Hold your breath as the drum rolls begin and we lay down the red carpet for the author behind Netflix's upcoming Indian version of Downton Abbey, the awesome Alka Joshi, who swept the literary world with her debut novel, The Henna Artist. Ladies and gentlemen, I bring to you the very lovely Alka Joshi.
Well, thank you so much, Anisha. This is wonderful to be here and to talk to your audience. I can't wait to see what kind of questions you have in store for me today.
Hi, Alka. Really, really nice to have you here. It's a pleasure and honor. Thank you so much for taking the time. It has been a pleasure collaborating with you. It amazes me, and literally, I have no words to express how thrilled I am to be in your presence, to have had the opportunity to engage with you over the past months. And I really have to say, the author apart, I really, really admire you as a person. I've been following your social media presence and the vibrance, the whole energy that you bring to your social media. I mean, it's really inspiring, to say the least. And it is it's my privilege to introduce you to our audience today. Alka Joshi was born in India and raised in the US since the age of 9. She has a BA from Stanford University and an MFA from California College of Arts. At age 62, Joshi published her debut novel, The Henna Artist, which immediately became a New York Times bestseller. A Reese Witherspoon Bookclub pick, was longlisted for the Center for Fiction First Novel Prize and is being developed into an episodic series by Netflix. The sequel, The Secret Keeper of Jaipur, released June 2021, will be followed by the third book in the trilogy in 2023, and we can't wait. Visit her website, alkajoshi.com, to know more about her and her books. Not just a very talented author, Alka is such a warm and vibrant person. Everything around her resonates that. Her presence is so full of life, as you will be seeing today. Her writing, stories, the whole aura, the colors of her book covers, the exotic and exquisite jewelry, and her strong social media presence all reflect on who she is. I genuinely admire you, Alka, for all the vibes you exude.
Thank you so much. My goodness, what a great and very gracious introduction.
So, what goes on in the mind of a person who can write all this and can have such a powerful impact on readers? She does it, how she brings her characters to life for readers across culture. Alka, we have your professional formal introduction here, but I would request you to start with telling us a little about yourself, who you are, the person behind the author. Tell us a little bit about your life and maybe some fun facts.
Okay. Well, I am 64 years old, and this is my fourth career as a full-time author. And I think that it was so wonderful for me to be raised by two parents who are very progressive. And when we came to the United States, I was 9 years old. And my father always wanted us, my brothers and I, to get this great education. So all of us went to great private schools. And then my mother had this idea that as her only daughter, I would get to do all the things she never got to do. And she allowed me to go wherever I wanted for college. She gave me the freedom to get birth control pills so that I didn't have to worry about getting pregnant while I was at the university. She just always encouraged me to follow whatever my passion was. And she knew that I loved art. Both my parents did. But I think she understood more than my father that I really wanted to pursue that as a career, not just as a hobby. So I think almost every career I have had, except for the very first one, had to deal with creative work. And I love being a creative person. Like to me, if I start with one idea, it sparks five other ideas, and then I can just keep going with it. It's like the juice I need to keep me vibrant and to keep me going. So those are some ideas about who I am. I like to, I live with my husband and my two little dogs. And
Lovely.
we've been married for this year, it'll be 26 years. And I live in Northern California. It's beautiful out here. I live by the water where we can see seals and dolphins and otters all the time. And I like to walk. I just had a swim this morning, and then tomorrow I'll probably take a bike ride. So I'm constantly moving, I'm constantly doing something.
Lovely, lovely. Awesome. So, you want to talk about your jewelry a little bit because that's one very important part of getting to know Alka Joshi. And I must say today, inspired by you, I am also, with my
Oh,
Jaipur jewelry.
I think that this is just wonderful. I think have my love of jewelry because of my mother. My mother always loved jewelry. But and when we got to the United States, instead of just wearing gold jewelry all the time, I wanted to wear silver because my hair started to go gray very early. And I thought,
Yeah,
okay, as long as I'm going to have this gray hair, it seems to me that silver goes better with gray hair than gold does. So I
yeah.
started to wear costume jewelry that was silver. And my mother said, "Why are you wearing that cheap jewelry? You could be wearing my gold jewelry if you wanted to." And I would
That's
say, "But Mom, this just goes better with me." And,
that's very
and
Indian
then
culture, that the gold is the one which mothers always prefer.
yes, exactly. As if that's the real jewelry. But the thing about jewelry, I think to me, is it's your personal style. It makes a statement about you. And I have always liked really bold, big jewelry. And
Yeah,
so for me, this just makes a statement about me. Like I don't want to be forgotten. I want you to notice me in a crowd. So this is why I like to wear, big jewelry. And for me, it's all about what makes me happy. So
yeah.
little by little, if you can believe this, my mom actually learned from me to start wearing more costume jewelry. And then she
Okay.
started making her own jewelry. And toward the end of her life, she was making all kinds of necklaces for me and bracelets, and I would design them and she would make them. So
Wow.
it was something that really tied us together.
Lovely, really lovely. I'm going to just check there's some incoming chat from the audience, and I'm going to just start taking in some hello for you. If you would like to just say hello back.
Yes.
Tripti says hello. Thanks for joining. Benazir Khan, thanks for joining.
Hi.
Parjeet, thanks for joining. Inspiration.
Lovely to
That's
see you guys. My goodness, look at all these people.
what a vibrant personality. Very excited to be part of the live chat. Thanks, Webavi. Yeah, people have been really looking forward to this. Finally, it's happening. Yes. The creativity of you flows with your words. We can totally read it through the henna artist. Wow.
Oh, that is so lovely to hear.
Kia saying hello. And there is Kathleen saying hello from New York.
Hi.
And there's Tenny from, yeah, yeah. Kathleen says, really enjoying Secret Keeper of Jaipur. Can't wait to hear more.
I am
Okay.
I am so delighted. With every book I write, I try to learn something. I try to do something different so that I can grow as a writer. So in the
Mm.
first book, I had started with two different points of view. I started with Lakshmi's point of view and Radha's point of view, and every
Yeah.
alternating chapter had one or the other points of view. And it was pointed out to me by my agent and a couple of editors that I hadn't become experienced enough as a novelist to be able to carry two different points of view. So I
Hmm.
had to eliminate all of Radha's point of view, and I did the whole henna artist with Lakshmi's first person point of view. I had to rewrite the whole thing so it's just her point of view. But by the time I got to The Secret Keeper of Jaipur, I had already been working on the henna artist for 10 years. So I had
Hmm.
been learning and growing as a writer and really, learning all the pitfalls and, what not to do and what to do. So by the time I got to The Secret Keeper, I thought, let me see if I have learned enough to carry three points of view, because three
Wow.
voices kept coming to me. And one, of course, is Lakshmi's voice, which will always be strong in my head. Another
Yeah.
was Malik. And
Hmm.
Malik was now an adult. His voice in my head was as an adult. So I thought, oh, it looks like he's about 20 years old. So his voice is very strong. And then his love interest in The Secret Keeper of Jaipur is Nimmi. She's a
Yeah.
tribal woman. And her voice became really strong in my head. So I thought, oh my gosh, I have to give her a voice too. And then
Wow.
when I handed all of that into my editor, I thought, I wonder if my editor is going to say this time, you cannot carry three voices. But she said, these are all working. So these are all strong enough that
Yeah.
they can be all in one book and everybody can understand that this is a different voice now speaking. So I was like, whew, okay, I've learned how to do that. Thank goodness. But then in novel number 3, which I just submitted to my publisher, that is called The Perfumist of Paris. And it's all about Radha now as a grown up. And Radha is 34 years old. She
Yeah.
is a perfumer in Paris. And
Yeah.
I wanted to go back to a first person point of view for her because I want us to be in her head all the time, the whole
Yeah.
time going through this experience. I wanted to be in her head. So I just made it all about her. And
Yeah.
I just, it works really well. It was so much fun to be in her head.
There's a lot more deep diving we would like to do into the story and the characters and the writing process. But to start with, I want to ease it into the conversation because it's really warming up. Why this particular genre? Why was the story inspired by some real life experiences, or why did you choose to write this? And after this, we will also talk at length about your journey as an author. How did you write the story? How did you become a published author? But to start with, why this particular genre?
So you mean why am I writing this trilogy?
Yes, and
Um,
why fiction? Why historical fiction?
yeah.
Why this? Why not maybe anything else? So, what
First,
inspired you to write this?
what's so funny is, first of all, Anisha, I had no idea I was writing historical fiction until my publisher said, this goes in the historical fiction genre. And I said, but the henna artist is only in 1955. The Secret Keeper of Jaipur is only in 1969. How can that be historical fiction? They said that in the publishing world, anything older than 40 years is considered historical fiction.
Yeah,
So that's
yeah,
where I ended up there. And, I think that like a lot of you, I grew up reading the classics, which were
yeah,
all historical fiction now, right? So I
yeah, yeah,
read Dickens and I read the Bronte sisters and I read Jane Austen. And of course, I read a lot of Tagore and I read all of the uh, R.K. Narayan, stories of Malgudi and all of those. So
yeah.
I guess I am a historical fiction, aficionado. I like historical fiction. I like being transported to a whole new place, a whole new period, a whole new set of languages. So I think for me, it was kind of natural to do that. But the reason that I started writing about India, which did come as a surprise to me, because I didn't think I would ever write about India,
Yeah.
is I was traveling to India a lot at the same time that I was in my master's program. And as I
Yes.
was traveling, my mother was telling me all kinds of stories about growing up in India. She reminded me of when we used to go to Shimla for the hot summers in Rajasthan. We would go up to Shimla. And she reminded me about the bandar, the monkeys, the little monkeys that are everywhere, and
Yes.
how she he had to warn us all the time not to feed the monkeys, because if you feed them once, they come and grab your food away from you.
Yeah.
Um, she reminded me of a lot of things. She reminded me of where we used to live in Bikaner, and they had this swing. There was a big swing. In India, a lot of people have swings,
Yeah.
on their trees, and we had
Yeah.
this big swing. And she said that your brothers would stand on the swing and hold on to the sides of the rope and really propel themselves all the way, and it would scare her to death. But she said, you were very quiet girl. And so you just sat on the swing and did a little just back and forth. And, just all kinds of things she was reminding me. There was a cobra in our yard. We had a very large yard in Bikaner and Banswara. And there was this cobra that came up on the side of the creek. And it was so exciting, right? Like my brothers and I were riveted, and my father went and got the neighbor who was 2 doors down, because he was a hunter. So he had a rifle, and he brought him over, and they actually shot the cobra. It was like, a whole day's worth of excitement for kids, right? So, she was reminding me of all these times of India, and I just thought, I have to write about India. I just have to. This is amazing. Then my husband brought home for me, because he knew I was thinking about writing about India. My husband is super supportive. He's American, and he has never been to India,
Wow.
but he is very supportive of anything I want to do. So he brought home this book called Hindu Altars. And in this book are all of these deities, and it's a pop-up book. So the first one is Lakshmi. And
Oh,
see,
this is
it's a
beautiful.
pop-up book. And it tells you a little bit about Lakshmi, and then I think there's Shiva, and there's Durga, and then there is Ganesh.
Good.
And then on
Yes.
the sides here are these beautiful henna hands, right? Mehndi. And so
Yeah.
it came to me like that Lakshmi was going to be a Mehndi artist. That is what she was going to do in her life. So, inspiration can come from all kinds of places. And for me, a lot of my inspiration is visual. So
Yeah.
if I see something, I get all kinds of ideas in my head about where I could write a story about that.
Yeah. This is lovely. I mean, this pop-up book literally seems to have, Henna and Lakshmi, it's very, very, very fascinating.
Yes. And I thought, that's it. Now that's going to be the name of my protagonist. It's got to be Lakshmi, because also my mother, you know how we all have pujas in our homes, and we pray, right? And my
Yeah.
mother prayed to 2 goddesses. One was Lakshmi and another was Saraswati. And I thought
Yeah.
Lakshmi, because she is also in this Hindu altars book, I thought that has to be the name of my protagonist. So I got her profession and her name from that little book that my husband got
Yeah.
for.
Lovely. So, in fact, you have almost answered some of the parts of the next question, but we'll still take them. So, we would like to know more in detail about your journey as an author. You have, I know, right now spoken about what inspired and why you wrote this. But when you started writing, when did you realize that you wanted to become a published author, and this was your calling, and that people start writing as a blog or as a self expression also, but when does that writing become serious and converts into a book for others? I want to know that part of your journey as an author. What made you venture on this path of writing?
So many different things. One was that when I met my husband, he was just graduating from the Stanford Writing Program. And it's a master's program. And I really loved his writing, because I've always been a lifelong reader. So I would read his writing and I would go, oh my gosh, I wish I could write like that someday. But I had gotten into advertising. So what I did was I was writing commercials all the time for TV and for radio. And I was writing print commercials and print advertising. And I think as I was doing that, I was learning how to tell tiny little stories, and I was developing my skills at writing dialogue and determining what character arcs were going to be, even if they were only going to last a minute in a TV commercial. That's what a character arc, could be. And so I admired writing, and I was writing, but I just wasn't writing long stories. I wasn't writing short fiction. I wasn't writing novels. And then when the 2008 recession came along, I had been running my own advertising and marketing agency for about 15 years. And I had some downtime because all the clients were like, backing off of their projects. There were so many layoffs during the mortgage crisis of the 2008. And,
Yeah.
as you know, here in America, our economy just plummeted. So I
Hmm.
thought, it'll take about 2 years to recover. So I've got to do something with myself for 2 years because I cannot sit idle. My husband will tell you, I cannot sit idle at all. So I thought, okay, well, for 2 years, what I could do is learn how to write a novel, which is something that my husband has been saying I could do. So I
Hmm.
entered this program for 2 years. It's an immersive master's program where I learned how to write a novel. I'm going
Wow.
back and forth to India. And that's where the idea of, really this gratitude for my mother came up for me, because every time we went back to India, I realized how patriarchal the society was there, and how she had had to fight so much in order to give me the freedom that I have. I
Right.
think my father would easily have married me off, in an arranged marriage, even before I got to college. I think he would have insisted I went to college, but I think he would have married me off sooner. And
Yeah.
my mother just refused to do that for me. She said, this is a girl who has her own ideas about what she wants. So let Alka do what Alka wants to do. So I thought it took so much courage for her to give me that kind of freedom and not raise me exactly the way she had been raised.
True.
So I thought, I want to create a character in fiction that
Hmm.
is a stand-in for my mother. But it's not, of course, my mother's life, because she didn't get to live this independent life that Lakshmi does. But Lakshmi
True.
gets to do so many things that my mother didn't get to do. And that
Yeah.
is how I started writing The Henna Artist. Then I write it. It becomes my master's thesis. So at the end of 2 years, now what do I do with it? It's not quite ready to be published. My thesis advisors loved it, but they told me it's not ready to be published yet. But also, I have to pay a mortgage, right? I have to pay my bills. And so at the end of 2 years, clients were calling me back and saying, okay, we've got a project. We've got to have you work on this and that. And so I just abandoned the book. I just set it aside. And then also, my mother needed me to take her to hospitals and so on. She was having some issues. And within 8 months of getting my graduate degree, my mother died very unexpectedly. And
Oh.
that really made me abandon the project, because I thought, oh my God, I wanted this to be there for her. I wanted this book to eventually be published someday so that I could thank her properly and immortalize her. But
Yeah.
now it's gone. So I thought, well, it doesn't make sense to keep going on. And then a year later or so, my thesis advisor called and said, are you still working on that book? I said, no. She said, you've got to work on it because we think that you have a shot at getting this thing published. And here's some ideas that you could, develop in the book. So she gave me some ideas, and it took me about a year to send her back another draft. And then she sent it to her agent. And next thing I knew, I had an agent in New York asking me to keep developing The Henna Artist. And I said,
Wow.
what do you want me to do? And then she had all these ideas for me. So for the next 3 years after that, I was working with my agent. And my agent had all kinds of suggestions. She was one of the people who suggested that I get rid of all the Radha chapters. So as much as it hurt me to do it, and every writer out there knows how much it hurts when somebody says this doesn't
Yeah.
work, you got to cut all this stuff out. So I cut all that stuff out, and then I added some things that she wanted me to add. And anyway, eventually I got frustrated working with her, because at that point I started the novel like maybe 7 years prior. And I said,
Yeah.
at what point are we going to, send this off to a publisher? And she said, well, now you need to hire some professional editors before I'm going to do that. So I hired professional editors. They looked over the book. They gave me all kinds of feedback. And I didn't like their feedback, because once again, they wanted me to change so many things or edit out things. And,
Yeah.
I just thought, no, I'm not going to do this. This is ridiculous. Why do I have to keep working on this? Why does
Yeah.
nobody publish it? So I gave up
Yeah.
again completely. I just put it away. A year later, I got back to it, and I read all the comments again from the editors. So, finally I said to my agent, here is my final draft to you. Please send it off to the publishers. If you don't want to get this published, for some reason, if you've lost heart with this, because by now she and I have been together for about 6 years. I said,
Yeah.
you know, if you've lost heart, then, you know, let me know and I will try to get another agent. She said, no, no, no. By the way, this is something I have learned over time. When you are, when you've worked really hard on something and it is time to give it up, uh, you know when it's time to lay down the law and say, I'm done. I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore. And my agent heard that in me. She thought, I don't want to lose this writer. So I will send it off, even though she didn't feel it was quite ready. So she sent it off. And then suddenly in 2 months, she had sold it. She had sold it to HarperCollins. And then I had a new editor, Kathy, and Kathy had a major change that she wanted me to make in the book. So you see, I think writing is a
Hmm.
marathon. It is not a sprint, it is a marathon. And
Yeah.
over the 10 years that it took me to get it to HarperCollins, I was learning how to be a better and a better and a better writer. And that's just what it takes. That's my journey. But
Yeah.
then I had another part of the journey, and that is once you sign the contract, and that's when I started to think of myself as an author. One, you know,
Yeah.
and so imagine how long it took me to just think about becoming an author. So
Hmm.
now I'm considering myself an author, and by the time I sign the contract to the time that the book is released by the publisher, it's another
Yeah.
8 months. That's how long
Wow.
it takes. Sometimes it takes 2 years. Yeah, because they have to now design the cover. They have to get the marketing plans together. They have to
True.
get the publicity plans together. They
And
have
the bigger the publisher, the more complicated the process is going to be because, of course, they have their SOPs too.
yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. So you know they're doing all of this stuff, and then it turns out my release date is March the 10th, 2020, which is right the day before World Health Organization announces COVID. So then
Oh
I
God.
couldn't even talk to anybody because all my events were canceled. Every bookstore is shut down. Libraries are shut down. And people are responding to me on social media saying, you know, I have a copy of your book, or I can't get a copy of your book, or I've tried getting a copy of your book. And so I just said, you guys, if any of you out there have copies of my book, would you please get a hold of me and I will Zoom in with you? Because at that time we were just learning how to Zoom. So people started responding. And as of today, I have done 739 book clubs virtually around the world.
I saw that post of yours somewhere in December last year, where the count of the book clubs, and that's around the time when we got connected, when I messaged you first time. It's incredible. It's absolutely amazing that it's a long journey of 10 years. First of all, to create a masterpiece, and then, in spite of releasing at such a, I don't know what to, unfortunate date or whatever. I don't know what's the right word, but it's been just incredibly amazing. I mean, it literally swept the literary world. I mean, we know. I mean, everybody knows Alka Joshi is like everywhere. So it's amazing. I mean, that speaks for the effort. And I will also step back and agree with you. One of the my next question was going to be, what does it take to be a published author? Because writing and creating a masterpiece, or creating a story, is one thing, one part of the journey, which is also a very tough one. You have to create a good story, but getting it published is a completely different ball game altogether, which you just spoke about. And I mean, I genuinely believe that being an author is one of the most difficult professions around. I feel, and the the uh, the tussle between an artist, and it could be any creative art, writing, painting, dance, and with with the marketing teams, it's a very difficult balance to strike, I feel.
Yeah.
I would also like to make a comment on your journey, the story you spoke about your mother. Um, I relate a lot to a lot of things you say. I am from Jaipur myself. I'm born in Kota, a very conservative place, and I would like to take, I mean, you know, talk about my mother a little bit, just the way you said, because your parents brought you up in a very liberal way, and I have grown up in India and in Rajasthan, and yet my parents have done a wonderful job of bringing up three girls in that community and society in a very liberal way. So I could resonate with a lot of things that you say. And really, really wonderful to hear about your journey. So I'll take a few questions from the audience before we go to the next question. Did you think of, have you done a reading of the book in Jaipur?
No, I never have. Because as I said, the pandemic started almost as soon as it was released.
Yes,
So
of course.
I have not been back to India since then. The last time I was in India was 2019.
Ah,
And I went there to ask a major question of young women like yourself, Anisha. I wanted to know, are you planning to live a very traditional lifestyle? Or are you
yeah,
planning to forge your own independent path in this world? Are you going to have a love marriage? Are you going to have an arranged marriage? I wanted to ask
yeah,
all these questions. Are you going to have lots of children, or are you somebody like me who really decided a long time ago, since I was a
yeah,
little girl, I knew that I didn't want to have my own children. I just never wanted children. And so I have followed that path. And I just wanted to know if there are other Indian young women out there who decided also the same
yeah,
thing. And I found them. I found all kinds of women. I found young women who want to get married, women who don't want to get married, women who want to have a career before they are married, women who want to finish their PhDs before they have a first child, women who would love to have their parents arrange a marriage for them because they're too busy doing their own thing. And
yeah, yeah,
women who decided, while they were in college, that they fell in love with somebody of their own caste, not of their own caste, and decided that they were going to tell their parents, this is my partner in life. So I found all kinds of different folks. And so 2019 was the last time I was in India. I would love to go for the Jaipur Literary Festival.
yes.
Wouldn't
I
that
was
be
just about to say that Jaipur Literature Festival is a must. I mean, that's the ideal place. I have been to Jaipur Literature Festival a couple of times. I got my copy of Q&A signed by Vikas Swarup there, one of my favorite books in a long time.
Wow. Well, can you, if you have an in into the Jaipur Literary Festival, I would love to know from them. They have never invited me. I would love to be invited to Jaipur for the
I
festival.
could put you in touch with someone. My sister lives in Jaipur, so I hope she's watching. So I will try to put you in touch with someone for sure. All right, let's move on to the next questions. It's just so fantastic talking to you. I'm just so delighted today. So, one small question. You made a point earlier about the fact that you wanted to do this project while for your mother, and then you had to pay mortgage and all that. So you go back to your career. So, what does it take to make writing a full-time career? Because all the authors we talk to, a lot of them who are a book or two old are usually writing by the night and they have a full-time career, and very few are able to take that step into writing full-time, which is able to pay them. So very tricky question. I don't know if it's a delicate matter, but yes, a lot of people would like to know. There are a lot of aspiring authors in our Oman Book Lovers Club as well. So, what it takes to be a published author and what does it take to make writing a full time career is a question that has been coming from our members.
Okay. So I think three main things are needed. One is passion. You have to have passion for your subject matter. Why are you writing? Why are you the best person to write about what you're writing about? And why now? Why are you writing about it now? If you can answer those three questions and you can determine that you still, after answering those questions, you're writing it because you have such a passion for this particular project, then you know that you're on the right track. So you need passion. Don't write about a subject matter that everybody else is writing about. If everybody else is writing about, oh, how I felt during the pandemic, please don't write about it unless you have some interesting angle, unless you have something unique to say about it. Okay, so the second thing that you need is perseverance. As I said, writing is a marathon. It is not a sprint. Let's say that you hear about somebody young who has just published a book and you think, oh, I'm that age. Why haven't I been able to publish yet? Chances are that that person started writing when they were 4 years old, and they have been writing little books and showing them to their parents, and just always writing. So people who get to the stage early are people who have been writing novels or little stories for a really long time.
Hmm.
Same thing with dancers. When a dancer makes it or an actor makes it at a really young age, it's because they've probably been acting a really long time or dancing a really long time, right? So give yourself a break. You have to persevere in this profession. You will get a lot of no's before you get some yeses. The Henna Artist was rejected by 2 publishers before my agent got a yes from HarperCollins. And I
Wow.
was adamant, by the way, about going with a very traditional publisher. I didn't want to self-publish because all those years ago that I was writing this book, self-publishing had not become the big thing that it is now, and it wasn't
Correct.
respected enough.
Hmm.
I think it has a lot more respect now, but it wasn't
Yeah.
respected enough, and I wanted my books to be respected. I am putting my heart and soul and my passion into these books, and I want the world to read them. So I am not going to just rely on a self-publishing mechanism or platform to do that. I wanted them to go out into the wider world. I wanted to be published by one of the big 5 here in the United States: HarperCollins, Penguin Random House, Simon Schuster, Macmillan, and Hachette. Those are the 5 big publishers, and I had to have it published by one of those big 5. Why? Because they have global distribution. Because I wanted this book to be read by everybody, by people in the Western world, by people in the Eastern world, in the Northern Hemisphere, in the Southern Hemisphere, everywhere. It was important for me to have that done. So I had to just persevere and keep listening to the people who were giving me good feedback. It's really hard, I think, when you're in a creative profession, when somebody says, I don't really
Yeah.
like the way that you've done this, or this character could use more work, or that plot line is a little thin. You need to really flush that out. It's hard because you tend to take a lot of this feedback very personally,
Yeah.
and you think, oh, well, that just means I suck. Oh my God, I suck. My writing sucks. Everything about me sucks. My ideas suck. So you have to make sure that you can get beyond a very personal relationship with the feedback. And you have to just say, what is it about this feedback that I can use to make my work better? And
Hmm.
sometimes when your feelings are really raw about the feedback that you get, when your
Yeah.
feelings are raw, you need to step away from the feedback. You need to go do something else. You need to not look at it for a while because
Yeah.
it is very, it can be very personal. So, you set that message aside and then you go
Yeah.
do something entirely different. Go read a book, go watch a movie, get your mind out of your work that you're involved in, and just go do something else. Go ride a bike, go take a walk, go hang out with a friend, and then
Yeah.
when you get back to your feedback, you will find that you can see things in the feedback that you couldn't the first time around
Hmm.
because you had some time and distance away from it. So keep that in mind. So the second thing that you need, as I said, is perseverance. Stick with it. Stick with it. The third thing that you need, I think, is patience. You have to have patience with yourself. You need to know that you're not going to get it right the very first time that you write the story. The Henna Artist took me 30 drafts. 30 drafts. Some of those changes were minor, some of those changes were major, but it took me 30 drafts to get this novel to the publisher and to get it published. So you have to have patience with yourself. I have very little patience. And I am used to doing, yeah, and I'm used to doing advertising, which, as you know, is on deadline, right? So deadline, you only have a week to pull this together. You only have 3 days to revise that script. Boom, 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 boom. You're always doing that with advertising. And so I was used to working fast. Well, with the Henna Artist, I had to slow down. Learning how to be a novelist, I had to take a breath every now and then and just say, what am I doing here? Am I serving the character in this scene? What do these 2 characters in this particular scene want from one another? Are they going to get it in this place, or am I going to make them go through several hoops before they get what they want from one another?
Yeah.
You have to take the time. And you have to have patience with yourself to do that. So be easy on yourself, be good to yourself. You know what? Sometimes just step away and make yourself a cup of tea, talk to a friend, just do anything that will help you have kindness for yourself. So I think
Yeah.
those are the three things that you really need. Okay, and then another thing that is apart from the three P's, as I call them: passion, perseverance, and patience, is that you need to know that writing is one third of the job. And I think you alluded to this, Anisha, a little while ago. Writing is only one third of the job.
Yeah.
The second third is that you have to be able to um, deal with everybody around you that is going to talk about this with you. You have to
Yes.
be able to talk about your work. You have to be able to say to people, this is what my book is about. This is what these characters are about. This is why I wrote it. These are my inspirations. This is why I write in the morning or in the evening or whenever. You have to be able to talk about yourself and your work. That is another third. And then the last third is you have to promote yourself. Even with a traditional publishing house like I have, they will provide you as much support as they have built in within their algorithm. For each book that they publish, they have an algorithm that they have devised. And that algorithm is telling them how many of the henna artist or the secret keeper of Jaipur, how many of
Yeah.
each of those are going to be able to sell. And then that determines how much of an advance they're going to offer you. And then
Yeah.
all of that algorithm is also going to determine how much publicity dollars they are willing to set aside just for you. So
True.
there's a lot of that kind of stuff that has to happen. And even though they're going to provide you support for the first several months, you're going to have to do the support yourself after that.
True.
See,
True.
I couldn't have spoken to over 300 book clubs
Yeah.
because HarperCollins provided those platforms for me. It was because I went out and I said, would you please recommend me to another book club that you have? I would really appreciate it. If you
Wow.
like the books that I'm writing, then I would really like to know more people who might like the books I'm writing. So, you have to be your own advocate. So
Yeah.
these are things that they don't teach you in school. They don't teach you
Yeah.
that, writing a book is not the end all and be all. There's still two more parts of this that you have to go through.
Yeah, true, true. I mean, that's such an amazing, because I don't think any of the authors we've spoken to has been able to give such a detailed answer to what it takes to make writing a full-time career. I mean, really, really, this is going to be very valuable for people who do aspire to be good, going in that direction. So, before we talk at length about the trilogy, there are a couple more things that we would like to know about. What kind of books do you like to read, and do you think your writing is inspired by what you read largely?
Um, well, I have to confess that one of my favorite things to read are mystery stories, detective stories, which I do not write.
Yeah.
So sometimes I think almost that I have to read another genre completely so
Hmm.
that I can write in my genre and not overlap, not steal from what somebody else has written that is similar to what I am writing. So that's one thing. But in order to write the my trilogy, I had to read a lot of Indian fiction, and
Hmm.
I read a lot from the 1950s and 60s, and even from the 40s.
I'm
Um,
sure.
I was able to watch a lot of movies that took place during that era, and I
I'm
watched a
sure. To create the scenery, I'm sure you need that sort of knowledge.
Yeah, you need, the backdrop. You need to know what people were wearing. You need to know how men and women were relating to one another. You need to know what the history and the economics and politics of that era were. So I read nonfiction to give me that kind of feedback. And
Yeah.
you have to be able to immerse your reader in the environment of your characters. And the only way
Hmm.
you can do that is to really surround yourself with the literature, the visual, movies, all of those kinds of. I looked at Life magazine and Look magazine from that era just to see, what was being talked about in India. Uh,
Yeah.
all of those magazines had made it to India, and they were very prominent. Reader's Digest was very prominent in India in the 50s and 60s.
Yeah.
So I immerse myself in that while I'm writing a book, but for pleasure, I really just read detective stories. murder mysteries.
Who's the favorite author on that?
So I like the work of Scott Turow. I like the work of P.D. James. There is
Uh-huh.
also and I'm not going to be able to recall her name, but she's Singaporean Indian, and she writes detective stories. I think it's Inspector Singh or something, and I love those stories. I like the work of oh gosh, what is his name? I'm trying to think. Andrew something. He writes the ladies' number one private detective agency in
Ah, yes,
Botswana.
yes, 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 yes. Even yeah, I have the books, but I can't remember the author's name. You're right. Yes.
Yeah, so I
Awesome.
like all of those.
I can see you're wearing one of those rings, which I have seen in one of your Instagram posts. That too was very beautiful. Okay, so tell us about your, you have talked about how Malik talks to you in your head and, all of that. And you've talked about the editing journey. But if you would like to add a little bit more about the writing process in terms of how do the stories happen? We've talked about Lakshmi and Hina and how your mother's stories, your life experiences have inspired. But how did you shape? How were you able to shape put all those pieces together to shape the book? Characters development. Do you think they take inspiration from people around you? Because to be very honest, if somebody lives in Jaipur today, the characters that you've built, the long introduction right at the start of the book, one can relate all of those characters to the society today also. Of course, society has progressed a lot, of course, and your book's characters are also very progressive for their times as well. But if somebody lives in Jaipur today, if you see the social circle around, the professions, the setting, it's still something that one can resonate with. So, how did the characters development happen? How did the stories take shape?
For me, the characters start with a visual scene in my head. And I think maybe advertising trained me in this way, but also it's because I'm an artist. I like to draw, I like to paint, I like to sketch. So for me, all of my scenes start with something visually that I can see. And it's actually a scene that's playing out in my head. The first scene
Hmm.
I saw in the henna artist was Lakshmi trying to do the mehndi on Parvati's feet. And I
Hmm.
was asking myself, what are these two women doing in this scene? What do they want from one another? Why is
Yeah.
Lakshmi painting a fig leaf and or a fig and a wasp on Parvati's feet?
Yeah.
And so those are the kind of questions I ask myself. I can see the bedroom that we're in. I have a very clear picture of it in my mind. I can see
Hmm.
that there is a diya in the background where Parvati must have lit her incense for the puja. And
Hmm.
I see out of the windows behind her, these open kind of French doors that you can open. That on the lawn in the back is her son or her two sons, and they're playing, some kind of badminton or something. I can't quite remember. So then I just have to figure out, what these people are doing in the scene. What does each of them
Yeah.
want in the scene? And then all of a sudden, Lala, the servant, shows up. And I go, oh, now what is Lala doing here? Of course, one of the things she's going to do is ask her mistress, what should I, cook for lunch, or what should I tell the cook, when do you want tea served, all of that kind of thing. And so then that gives me an opportunity to see how Parvati is going to relate to her servant and how Lakshmi reacts to what's happening here in this scene. That's how scenes come to me. They're always visual and they're moving. Uh,
Hmm.
and so then after I sort of get done figuring out what is happening in that scene, what are people saying, what do they want from one another, it automatically then recalls another scene in my mind. And that's a scene, I don't know whether it goes directly next to the scene that I just developed, or maybe it's
Yeah.
going to be later, but it's a scene that I have to start developing now in my head because it's shown up. And
Yeah.
so maybe that involves another character. And then all of a sudden Malik is there. And I think, oh,
Yeah.
where did the kid come from? So most of this is just coming from my head. But yes, I think you're right in that the people of my world are people who have similarities to people I know, or
Yeah.
I have met in my life at some point. Or they have something in common with, a friend of a friend told me about a story, and I think, oh, well, that's an interesting story. Maybe I'll attribute that to Kanta. That's kind of how it all goes in my head.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, wonderful. I mean, there's another author, Amar Al-Naimi. He spoke about the same kind of process that he doesn't create the stories. The stories come to him. They just play automatically, and he just has to write them. So I'm just very much reminded of that conversation as you speak, because you are saying that stories are happening in your head, and you're just wondering, oh wow, okay, what's happening? So it's
Yeah,
really fascinating, really
yeah.
fascinating.
It's like tiny little movies that are playing in my head. Yes.
Yeah. So I mean, and the way you spoke in the prologue as well, you personify your characters as if they're really, really real. Malik was asked, how you spoke about Malik was like, tell my story. That's really amazing. So now's the time to talk about the trilogy in much more detail. Throughout our two talks, we have been talking about Henna Artist, Secret Keeper of Jaipur, and Perfumist of Paris intermittently. But this is the time now we do go deep dive. So inspiration we've talked about. Do you think any of the characters take after you?
Yeah, I think that Lakshmi has a lot of me in her. She looks just.
What happened? Is it my network or is it Alka's? Um, can Okay, all right. Looks like we've lost Alka's lost network, and she will be back. In the meanwhile, uh, let's look at the questions. While we wait for Alka, just a quick reminder, there's a giveaway coming up at the end of the chat. The winner will be chosen by Alka. So we've lost her. I'm sure she'll be back. And there she is.
All right, here I am. I think I had a connection issue. Okay, so let's see. I can't remember now what you were asking me.
Let's see. You were talking about how Lakshmi you think takes after you.
Okay. So yeah, she looks like me, and I have blue eyes from my mother, and then my younger brother has green eyes as well. So it took two recessive genes to make that happen, and that is why Lakshmi and her sister and Nikki all have these kinds of eyes. And in my father's case, my father has very dark, brown eyes, but he had an aunt who had green eyes, and then my mother not only has light eyes, but then her grandfather had bright blue eyes. So that's kind of where all of that comes from. But when it comes to Lakshmi's way that she's dealing and negotiating with people in business, that's me. Because my mother never had a chance to go into business for herself, but I did. And so I understand what it is to have difficult clients and how you often have to swallow your pride while they're telling you things. And you have to be able to navigate around their issues so that you can come out ahead.
Yeah. So, what else would you like to talk about? The books that we haven't covered yet, because we have intermittently talking about stories. Would you like to tell something more about the next book? When is it expected? 2023 is what we know.
March 28th, 2023 is the date right now that's set up for it. What happened during the pandemic, there were a couple of really fantastic things that happened during the pandemic. So let me tell you about those. One of them was that more people started reading because we weren't allowed to go out of our house. We ran out of things to stream because we got tired of seeing the same things over and over, and we binge watched everything. And so what was next? We started to read. So reading went up, but a lot of people couldn't get the physical books. And so they started reading ebooks and audiobooks and listening to audiobooks. So those two platforms went way up during the pandemic, and they have stayed up, thank goodness.
Yeah.
So that
Yeah.
I think people are still thinking, well, if this pandemic happens again, I would really like to be able to have, things to read and listen to. And so, I couldn't be happier in knowing that both of these books, they're divided into thirds. A third of the books are sold as hardcover or paperback. A third of them are sold as ebooks, and a third of them are sold as audiobooks. And what's wonderful to me, Anisha, is that I get to select the narrators for the audiobooks. So the voices that I hear in my head, how does Lakshmi sound? How does Malik sound? How does Nimmi sound? How does Radha sound? I get to select the narrators, and we do audition tapes that the Harper Audio might send me, but I also go through Audible and I look for the right kind of sound that I'm hearing in my head. And all of those audiobooks so far, the two so far, have been super successful because the voices sound just like what people are sort of imagining in their heads.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
so, this is another thing that I would like to tell people is that once you write a book, keep in mind that there are all these other platforms that your book will fall into. And you should be involved in that process. You may not be asked to be involved in that process, but you could be somebody like me who says, would you mind if I also looked for the right narrator? I know that you're doing a great job doing that, but I hear a voice in my head, and I know you can't hear that same voice. So is it all right if I look for the right narrator? And you'd be surprised the more you offer your services in that kind of way that you can request, but not necessarily demand. You get a lot of support from your publishing house. I have the best publisher in the world because my team is so much behind my books because I'm always collaborating with them. I always want to produce the best book possible. I want to produce the best ebook and audiobook possible. And it's really important to me that I work with them to achieve that rather than saying, oh, I know better because this is my work and you can't change it and you can't do this to it. One way in which I had to let go of a lot of control on the book is the titles. I don't do good titles. I am awful with titles. And so I wanted to call the henna artist the enemy of the crocodile because of this proverb that's in the book, only a fool remains in the water and stays an enemy of the crocodile.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to call it that. And they said, Alka, they sat down with me and they said, this is not going to sell one book. So we would really like to call it the henna artist. We know it's your work, it's your story, but is it all right if we just call it the henna artist? Because that's what Lakshmi is. That's what this book is about. So I said, oh, okay, all right, fine. And I just had to give that up. You have to give up a lot of your ego in order to get the best product. So for the second book, I said, you guys just go ahead and come up with the title because I don't know. I'm not going to suggest a title for book number 2. And then for book number 3, they're the ones that came up with The Perfumist of Paris. Because book number 3 is about Radha. She's in Paris. She's working as a perfumer. And one of the most fascinating things that I wanted to tell the world about was that the key ingredients that go into a lot of the perfumes that are world renowned, we're talking about Chanel No. 5 or Hugo Boss or Dior, the key ingredients for those come from the Indian subcontinent. So many of the, most perfumes have sandalwood oil or a portion of sandalwood oil in their base note. And as we all know, sandalwood, for the most part, was mined from India, was harvested in India because that's where it grows. Now it's being grown in other tropical places, specifically for the perfume industry. But, that's where it originated. Same thing with, vetiver grass, kus, which we use on window blinds and so on in the hot summers. That was originally from India. Now it's grown in Haiti, and Haiti is a major supplier of vetiver. But, still vetiver from different places will smell differently, and Indian vetiver is still revered throughout the world.
Wow.
Another could be, the jasmine grandiflora, and that is a very intense jasmine. It comes from India. There's 200 varieties of jasmine all over the world, but they are all going to smell different based on where they're growing and what the soil conditions are. So many of these ingredients come from India, and I want people to know that. I want people
Yeah.
to know that a lot of what they enjoy in this world comes from India and
Yeah.
Pakistan and Bangladesh and Sri Lanka. And, they need to start appreciating our part
Yeah.
of the world, right? They need to start appreciating that part of the world for all of the good that it provides.
So
So
even though
rather,
the title says Paris, it's actually story glorifying again, exotifying again the Indian subcontinent.
yeah, exactly. And so Radha is looking for key ingredients for a perfume that she has been assigned to make. And so she's going to come to India once again. But this time she doesn't go to Jaipur. In the third book, she goes to Agra, where the courtesans who helped Lakshmi when she was first a young woman and made her way to Agra and traded her cotton root bark
Mhm.
sachets for a room and board at the courtesan's house at the Kota.
Yeah.
She is Radha is going to get the help from the courtesans about the raw ingredients that she needs because, as Lakshmi told her, who better than the courtesans who know how to entice and seduce with perfume, with fragrance,
Yeah.
about where you can get some of these ingredients. So they're going to go to Agra, and she's going to meet up with Lakshmi there. But also, she's going to learn while she's in Agra that somebody in Paris is waiting for her, and that is
Oh,
17-year-old Nikki, whom she gave birth to, right, in the Henna Artist, but
yeah.
17 years prior, and she has not had anything to do with him since then. She has completely, just said, that was then. It was too hard for me to leave him. I'm not going to think about him anymore. All of a sudden, he's at her doorstep saying, "Hey, I found all these letters that my mother has been writing to you that return unopened, and I want to know who you are." So now, what does Radha do? Does she tell him that she's his birth mother, or does she keep that to herself?
Wow. Wow. So fascinating. I mean, there's so many elements that are fascinating, all about the perfumes, all about the personal trials and tribulations. Wonderful, wonderful. I'm going to go, we have a couple more questions to ask you, but I'm going to go take a lot of very interesting questions that have been lining up from the audience. This is very different, but we must take this up. How did you find your innermost shrine? I'm not sure if this is, I mean, you'd like to answer that. How did you find your innermost shrine?
Oh, my innermost strength?
Shrine. The question is, how did you find your innermost shrine?
Oh, shrine, yes. Well, I think it's a lifelong journey to find the part of yourself that you want to expose to the world. And I think when we're kids, we don't have the language and we don't have the wherewithal and the agency to be able to say, this is who I am. We're still learning about ourselves, we're learning about the world. As we get older and older and older, I think we start realizing that whatever the world is prescribing for us isn't necessarily for us.
Yeah,
For example, I'll tell you about the kids. It's like everybody thinks that women are born and bred to have kids, but not every mother, not every woman should be a mother. Not every woman wants to be a mother. And so you have to look at your innermost self and say, is this
yeah,
something for me? Or is this something I don't, like I think it's wonderful to have nephews and nieces, but I don't really want to raise my own. You have to think about these kinds of things. You have to evaluate what you want in your life, and you have to keep doing that throughout your life so that you are on your path. You're not on somebody else's path. You're not on a prescribed path that somebody thinks is good for you, but you're on your
yeah.
own path. And I think it's a lifelong thing. I think I'll be exploring who I'm all about and what I like and what I don't like and what I believe in until the day I die.
I think it takes a lot of courage to, be able to do what you just said, uh, to be able to question the norms of the society. And it's a good thing if you're able to. It's a simple one there. What's your favorite place in India?
I have not been everywhere in India, so I can't really tell you what my favorite place is. But I do have to tell you that I love, the Queen's Necklace area in Mumbai. I really like that.
Right,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, and I like Bangalore. I think that Bangalore is so green and kind of lush. I really like that. And I
Yeah.
like Jaipur's palaces. I think the palaces are beautiful. The Udaipur Palace is really
Yes.
gorgeous. The one that's on the lake. There's a certain beauty in Rajasthan that I have not found anywhere else. There is just a sort of majestic quality in all of the palaces of Rajasthan that I've never seen anywhere else.
I would have to agree, even though it's a biased opinion. But I do agree. Even Chittorgarh Palace, I think I remember visiting as a child. There's a lot of history, I think, and it also overlaps with a lot with Gujarat and Maharashtra. I think Gujarat, Maharashtra, Rajasthan, that entire belt has that historic um, element to it. So yes, I'm going to take the next question. Yeah, sorry, this one. Reading the Hina artist, sometimes I just didn't like Radha. Is that the reason you've deleted? But you answered that the deleting of Radha part was by the agent or the editors. But how would you react to reading the Hina artist? Sometimes I just didn't like Radha.
I am so glad that you didn't like Radha because you see, if you have a visceral response to any of my characters, I am delighted because it
Yeah.
means that I have developed them to a point where you have a strong feeling about them. And I don't care which way the strong feeling goes. As long as you get a strong feeling about a character, I know that I've done my job of developing them to a point where you feel like they're real. And if they were
Yes.
in front of you, you might slap them or you might kiss them, depending on how you feel about them.
I agree 100%. This is something I really wanted to talk about, and I did not ask this question because I already saw it in comments earlier. You gave us that quote that the Hina artist began as a love letter to your mother, but it ended up as a love letter to India. We would really like to talk a little bit more about it.
Um, oh, and then Anisha, I think I might have to go after this because I think I have a no,
Oh,
no, no.
okay.
Hang on. I just have to make sure. I think I have a 1:30, or is it a 1 o'clock? Let me
Have a
just see.
couple more questions. So if you can give us 10 minutes more, I think it will be good.
Okay. Okay. It looks like it is a 1 o'clock, but okay, let me just send a quick email. Sorry about that.
Okay.
Okay, so
Sure.
the reason that it became a love letter to uh my, well, I told you about why it was a love letter to my mother, right?
Yes. Yes.
And um and
Take a
then what
moment and
happened.
please write your email. Please don't worry. Please take a moment and
Okay,
write your email.
all right, great.
In the meanwhile, I'll remind our audience that there is a giveaway running on our Instagram on Alka Joshi's page and Oman Book Lovers page. If you haven't participated yet, this is your last chance because in about 10 minutes, Alka Joshi will be announcing the winner for the giveaway. So if you are watching and if you're somebody who hasn't yet participated in the giveaway, go and do that now.
All right, great.
Yes.
All right. So what happened is, okay, so all that time I'm writing it for my mom, but as I'm doing that, I am learning all about India. Learning about the history of India, and I'm learning that the reason that India, I think, for so many years has been considered post-independence was considered poor and underdeveloped and illiterate, and it had nothing to really say for itself. Certainly people here in the West never wanted to visit India because it had beautiful things. They just thought, those poor people. They were always feeling sorry for India. And I thought,
Yeah.
why is that? And as I read the history, and as I talked more to my father, of course, my mother and father were born in the 30s and then were there during independence and after independence, I learned that it was because the British had destroyed so much of India while they were there over the 200 years. that they were not benevolent overlords of India, that they were actually destroyers of three major industries within India that they didn't want to compete with. One of them was a textile industry. As we know, this is why we have a handloom on our flag, because Gandhi wanted everyone to start making their own textiles again. The British had destroyed the textile industries in India because they were starting their own Victorian textile mills that they wanted to sell cloth from to the world. Secondly, they destroyed the steel making industry in India. And I don't even know if anybody knew that India had a steel making industry, but where do you think that all of those swords for the warriors came from? Those sharp, strong swords that warriors always carried, to their battles. The third industry that the British destroyed was the shipbuilding industry, because, the teak in India and the rosewood in India is so strong that the ships built from that wood do not leak. And
Yeah.
the European ash and the European woods that are used for their ships up there are much weaker and start leaking after a couple of years. So, the British also then destroyed India's shipbuilding industry. They didn't want the competition. So because they destroyed those industries, they put tens of millions of Indians out of work. They also, anytime that an Indian said, hey, you can't do this to me, they would put them in prison. They would kill them. They would maim them. They would demean them or denigrate them, demote them the way that Lakshmi's father was demoted in the Henna Artist. And so just learning about all the hideous things that the British did to India really gave me a sense of pride about this country that I'm from. It turned out that before the British came, India was a very prosperous country. That's why the British came here. That's why the British came to India, because they didn't want to compete with, they wanted the raw materials that India had, the spices, the jewels, the gold, the handicrafts, the artisans, and the work that they were doing. They wanted all of that stuff. In fact, Britain still holds on to about $44 trillion of Indian wealth in the form of jewelry and manuscripts and handicrafts. So, these are all things that help me to realize that I need to tell the world about all of the beauty that India holds and all of the reasons that these colonizers, not just the British, but also the Dutch, the French, the Spaniards, they all came to India for its wealth, for her wealth. And after they denuded her, that's when they all left. So, certainly I think it's remarkable that a country that was so impoverished, left impoverished after independence, has managed now to really rebuild itself. I think that's remarkable. I think it's remarkable that 1.4 billion nation has 1.4 billion, people in this nation have maintained a democracy instead of falling to despotism or what is it called? Anarchy or, anything like that, So, so I think it's really important that we recognize India for the resilience of her people, regardless of her past. So that is why I consider my books a love letter to India.
In continuation to what you've said about the representation to the Western world, do you think the Western world loved this book more than the other parts of the world because of the representation, maybe?
Because of the representation of,
I mean, you've presented the other India, which is not popularly known. So do you think that the Western world loved your book more because of
I'm not exactly sure where that question is coming from, because the two novels have been bestsellers in India. They've been huge in India. So I'm not really sure we can say that the Western world loved it more than the Eastern world. And, my books have been translated into 26 languages. So they're actually popular all over the world. And I think the reason for that is because readers can relate to these characters. I had a man from Slovakia, a 90-year-old man. He wrote to me courtesy of his son, Igor, who could actually write English. So they write me an email.
Mm.
saying that he loved the henna artist. He has never been to India, this 90-year-old man, but the characters of the henna artist reminded him of the characters of his village in Slovakia all those years ago when he lived there. And I think that that's what I keep hearing from people from Portugal, from Colombia, from Croatia, from Russia. Everybody is telling me I can relate to these characters. These are characters from my family life.
Yeah, awesome. So, uh, one question I could see here: did you receive any feedback from
This
someone saying,
this this has to be the last question. I'm sorry.
all right, so I'm going to skip this and I'm going to come to one important part. Would you like to? Yes. One thing I really want to ask you is, what do you think is the secret to your success? What does it take, in your
Um,
opinion?
I think that I'm a really hard worker. I think I'm willing to do 30 drafts of something in order to make it the kind of thing that somebody wants to publish. I think that I remember to say please and thank you and I'm sorry. Those are basic things that we all learn as children. And somehow, as we turn into adults, we sometimes forget. I think that I'm just as happy for other people's success as I am for my own. And I like to promote people who I think are doing great work. I'm always happy to help them. Um, and I think that there is a uniqueness in all of us that needs to come out, a uniqueness in us that we all need to harvest and mine and share with the world, because I think the world is a better place for it. So if you have that in you, then please do that and please share.
The other questions from the audience, Alka, what we'll request you is, whenever you have the time on the social media, if you could reply to their questions, that will be like really, really great.
Sure, I'll be happy to. All
Yeah.
right.
So, time to announce the giveaway winner then. Do you have the winner with you?
Okay, you have to tell me, how would I know the winner?
I sent you a list of participants on the email. Could I just forward that to you very quickly? Because we would like the winner coming from you.
Okay, but can I look at it in my own time and then I will
Sure.
send that to you.
All
I
right.
will send you the winner.
Exactly. Yes, yes.
Okay,
Okay.
great.
Thank you so much. It has been extremely wonderful talking to you, and I can't thank you enough for taking the time out to join us. And
Oh,
thank you everyone who joined. And thank you everyone. Good night and good day to you, Alka.
thanks everybody. Bye.
Bye bye. Thank you.